Hey guys, Dolly here. Welcome back to Gypsy Rose Papery. Today we are going to do a little, I don't want to call it a tutorial. I want to say it's more of a craft with me, but this is in response to all of you that have asked me in the past how to cover those ugly white backs on the back of scrapbook paper pages. And I'll show you an example. Watch your eyes. This is what I'm talking about. So we are going to do that today. There are many different ways you can do that, but I'm going to start off really simple and we're going to do it with stencils. We are going to cover those ugly white backs with some stenciling. And I know some of you are going to be like, well, that is pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to stencil the back of these pages. Yes, but there are many different techniques that you can use to achieve different sort of looks with the stencils. And this is one of my favorite ways because one, it's cost effective. Stencils are super cheap. You can get them from like, you know, less than $2 to all the way up to $5 for the big ones. And besides the stencil, the only other supplies you would need is what you're going to ink it with. So I'm going to use some very well loved archival ink here in Plum, and I'm going to use some Glimmer Mist, which is my other go-to. So these can be found at the discount stores, probably a lot cheaper than on their website. So just know that sometimes the nozzles and stuff don't work kind of right, but you know, we can MacGyver it into working. So I have here this lovely journal that I'm working on. And actually, I'm working on a series of these, and it's got a few white backs. And so, to be honest, I don't mind a white back on paper like this or in a journal like this because it is bright and airy and it's, you know, representative of spring. And so I don't really mind the white page here and there. And some of this has been patinaed, but like, you know, the backs of that is pretty white. This is definitely like blinding white. So, you know, I would say in a pinch, rock the white page and just, you know, let it add to the brightness in your journal. But when you want something a little extra special, you can use a stencil. And so we're going to take this first page and put the rest there. And we're going to protect our area. Why? Because ink can be permanent, especially archival ink. Remember, archival is different than distress ink. Distress ink is reactive to water. Archival ink is not. It does not budge once it dries. So we have 3 different sizes today because you can do 3 different effects. Obviously, the bigger the stencil, the more kind of layering and different kind of techniques you can do. So I'm going to start with that one, the biggest one, which is this kind of like vine one. So I like a big stencil too because that way you can kind of just lay it on top and it pretty much fills up the entirety of your pages there. So that's a plus. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a layering effect. So you're just going to want to dab your inker lightly in the ink, right? Just get a nice good amount of ink on there. And so at first, the first layer is going to be very super light. So I'm just going to dab very lightly across the entirety of the stencil. You might have to re-ink here and there, but you're not looking for a very dark effect. You could barely see it. That's what you want. You want to barely see that stencil coming through. Okay. You want to go back over a little bit more. It should be very whispery, very light. Okay. So when we lift this up, it doesn't look like we did much, right? But when you lift it up, you have a really nice feathery effect, which is what we want. And then the places where the stencil didn't quite reach, don't worry about that because we are going to layer on top of that. So just to kind of move the pattern around a little bit, I'm going to set it vertically. And the stencil before was like this. We're going to set it like this. And so this layer can be a little bit darker, and so you can add a little bit more pressure onto that stencil. But again, dabbing, not yet fully doing the whole circular motion. We're just dabbing at this point still. We're just picking up a lot more ink and maybe dabbing a little bit harder so that pattern really kind of shows through. But we want to still keep it feathery and light, and so that's why we're not going to do the whole like swirly thing that everyone associates with stenciling. And so when we lift, we still have a nice light feathery kind of look, but you can already see the depth that's there. So I'm just gonna twist this around, and we're not gonna get real technical about where we place the stencil. If you want to overlap a little where the pattern ended, you can totally do that. Don't stress yourself out. This is supposed to be fun, and it really doesn't lend itself to perfection because, let's be honest, it's a piece of plastic on top of a piece of paper and they're gonna slide here and there. So don't get upset if it doesn't line up exactly, or if there's places where you didn't get the ink on evenly. It doesn't matter. I mean, just have fun with it. That's my best piece of advice that I could give you. Isn't that right, Mimi? So see how pretty already this looks. We can leave it like this, but I'd like to add yet a third layer. And this layer, we're gonna add even more ink onto our little dauber here. And I'm gonna get a little bit more strategic about where I'm gonna place the next bit of stenciling. So like this spot here is looking a little blank. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of look at this stencil, and I'm gonna maybe just do this leaf alone. And so this is where you're gonna go in and really sort of get heavy-handed and do the whole circular motion thing. Okay, so we're gonna do that there. I think maybe here in this spot here is a little bit light, so we're gonna go in and use this nice long one, kind of like right there, and really make that one fern leaf pop, kind of like that. And then you can kind of do that here too, just for like continuity and for it to look more put together. So we're just gonna add this fern leaf here. And even though we're making this pattern kind of stand out and really kind of building up that ink, you still want to somewhat keep it not too heavy-handed, because you're going to want to write, or you're going to want the person that receives this to write over it. And so you don't want it to be so dark that they're not going to be able to see what they write. But how cool, whoops, would it look with writing over it, or like a picture? It just adds so much. So this is our first technique, which is layering stencils. So here we have two little sort of half tag pages. I'm gonna pop this up like that. So for these smaller pages, we are going to use a smaller, more detailed stencil, more dainty, if you will. So I'm gonna do this one little half page at a time. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna create a border effect. So basically darker on the edges, lighter as you get to the center. So go ahead and load up the ink on your little dauber, because you want that border to be really nice and dark. You can use a ruler here if you'd like to get a cleaner, crisper border edge. So basically what you would do is kind of map out where you want to stencil, and that way you get a clean edge on the inside. I don't really care for that at this time or for this project, but for another project, sure. For this one, I'm just gonna roll with it. I want it to look sort of messy and feathery, so I'm just going to focus on the edges as much as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, for those of you that have been watching my channel for a long time, you know that I'm not really much of a perfectionist per se for certain things. And so now we have a nice border. When you get to the inside, you can just start dabbing. Not too light, obviously. A little bit lighter pressure as you get to the middle. But around the edges, you can go a little bit heavier. And then you lift, and you have a really pretty dark border around, and then a light feathery inside. And so I'll just flip this tag around and do the same. Again, don't worry about it kind of overlapping, just let it happen. And so we're gonna do the outside with our dauber really loaded up with ink. And then the insides, we're gonna go a little bit lighter and get lighter and lighter on it as you go to the middle. Okay, and so there you have it. You have a really cute border and you have a really nice light center. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one, and then we're going to come back and do the last and final stenciling technique. Okay, on this last one, we are going to do a twofer. And what I mean by that is we're going to do one technique that we can also kind of flip and reverse it and use on another page. And so this will also bring me to a very good point. So before I knew I was stenciling, I was kind of just going ahead and embellishing the journal. So one word of advice is, if you think you're going to do any kind of stenciling or stamping, definitely do that first before you go ahead and start kind of embellishing, because now I wanted to go ahead and stencil this, and this little piece of textile is kind of in the way, but it's cool. It's right at the corner. We can still do what I meant to do with this piece. So what we will do is kind of just fold it back, flush with the corner of the page. And so for this one, I'm going to use another large stencil, kind of like a medium-sized one, and flip this way. And so we have this sort of damask type stencil, and for this one we're going to spray. And so because we're going to spray, you're going to want to put something over this so that it doesn't do an ugly line there and kind of mess your technique up, or you can roll with it and make it part of your technique. It's totally up to you. I will put something on there. And so I have this napkin, so I will do that. And then here I have a kind of pocket page, and so what I'm going to do is go ahead and have it open and ready, because as soon as I finish this, I'm going to automatically reverse stencil on this side, and I'll show you what that is as soon as I'm done here. So again, I'm using Glimmer Mist, and so we have that there. And then we are going to layer the bottom. Okay, and then as soon as you're done, just get the page off of there. Lift this up carefully, put your other page down, and you're going to reverse stencil here. So basically what that means is the side that you just sprayed, the side with all the excess Glimmer Mist, you are going to put that side down and create a reverse stencil effect like that. And if you still have some on there, you could go ahead and just keep pressing down. If you don't see a lot on there, you can go back to your page, kind of where you had the gaps, spray away. So again, doing kind of a stenciling effect there too. And remember, this is the pocket side, so we're not going to worry about that, but this side we want an effect on. So there you have it. And on the bottom here, since we don't want to get any more excess on here, we're just going to go ahead and kind of lightly spray around the stencil. It'll make the parts that you already stenciled darker, but it will add some color around that stencil. Okay, so that is the third and final technique, and when this closes up, you'll have something that looks like that. Super cool. And then here you'll have that. So with inks and glimmer mist, you do want to make sure you clean that off because it's all gunky and wet. And one thing you definitely want to make sure you do is clean your nozzle. Now, I'm not a big stickler for, oh, you have to clean, make sure you do this and make sure you do that. But with sprays, I am, because that nozzle will clog up on you and then will create the issue I had with this one, which is sprays once and then won't spray again. So this one will be my backup, which I'll probably pour in here. I'll just change out the top part. So that, my friends, wraps it up for this cover your white backs, or your scrapbook page white backs. We're gonna put this stuff back in here. So when you open up your book, you have some really nice effects on there. Open this side because that side is a flip, but see? So I hope you enjoyed this mini craft with me / tutorial. I hope I gave you some ideas on how to cover the white backs on your scrapbook paper that isn't coffee paper glued on there or sewed on there, or isn't actually dyeing the paper itself, because I know that's a lot of work, and it also adds like a grunge to the paper that maybe you don't really care for because you're trying to keep it light and airy. And then my second piece of advice is just rock the white back. Okay, let it add light and joy into your journal. Don't fight it, just let it be. But I can totally understand why some of you do want alternative options besides, you know, the usual. So I hope you guys enjoyed this and that you found it useful. And if you did, or if you have any more questions or any more suggestions for video, I'd love to hear that down in the comments. I hope you guys have a great afternoon, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.